have the honor and the privilege of introducing Rocko.
A couple years back, one morning, I was laying in bed, looking for a video for a recipe for French toast. I've been talking about it for a couple days at that point. My girlfriend, Emily, she'd been hearing all about it, and she was all on board. She loved it. She was like, oh, this sounds great. This sounds delicious. We'll get some brioche bread. It'll be great. And I said, oh, well, technically, I don't mean to nitpick. You use Texas toast for French toast. She was like, oh, okay, whatever. She didn't give a shit. She was like, fine. Who cares? But I was laying in bed, I was looking at this video, and the guy in the video, he says, okay, so first we're going to start by making a loaf of brioche bread. So she kind of turns over, she goes, well. Your buddy Babish uses brioche bread. Interesting. Y'all, I flipped out. I lost it. I totally snapped. I started shouting, and I was like, look, Babish can make his French toast however he wants. He can use brioche bread. It doesn't matter. But when my dad made French toast, he used Texas toast, and that's just how we had it in my house, and that's the way I would like to do it, okay? It's not a big deal. You can just It's fine. It's fine. I don't want to talk about it, okay? It's fine. Cool. So we just let that sit for a second. Just the air was heavy with that because that was uncomfortable. And eventually I sat up. I knew I had to say something. I sat up and I looked at my girlfriend. And I said, "Babe, I'm so sorry. I don't know where that came from, and I should never. Like, you don't deserve to be talked to that way. You don't deserve to be screamed at. That was so out of pocket for me and so unacceptable, and I am so sorry. That's not the kind of partner I want to be. That's not the kind of person I want to be. That's not the kind of man I want to be. I'm really sorry. I don't know where that came from." And she looked at me and she said, "It's okay. I just have one question. I noticed you mentioned your dad always made it with Texas toast. Do you think it might have something to do with it?" She asked me this question because a couple days prior, my dad had died. He kind of taught me how to feel. Parents teach their kids a lot of things, teaching you how to feel. They teach us how to handle our emotions, how to handle situations and approach people and interact and all that goodness, and how to approach our feelings. How do we process them? And he had a really nuanced, really interesting way for handling hard feelings, and that was don't. Whoa, what? Mad? I'm not mad anymore. Come on, let's go make some French toast, bud. It'd be great. And that was great. That was it. He was great at that. He could just shut it off. He was just done. Right? He was done being angry. And we would get in these screaming matches. I would be in a screaming match with an adult. I would be getting screamed at by an adult, right? And I would get so mad. I'd storm off to my room, which is the only place I can just have my feelings. I'd close the door, and then I was safe to be angry. Because you can't do that. You can't do that in front of Dad. Can't do that in front of Dad because you can't start yelling again, because then he might start yelling again, and if he starts yelling, you don't do that, right? So it was tough. It was a little fucked up because then an hour later he would come out. He'd come out and he'd do this thing where he would just come out an hour later and go, "Hey son, I'm really sorry about that. Well, you and I went go get some cheeseburgers, or maybe some Taco Bell." And that was his way of saying, "All right, angry time is over. All right, we're cool now. We're good. We're having fun." And I fucking hated it. I couldn't stand it because I was never, it was his dime. It was his time, right? So I had to figure out a way to handle that. And I decided that I just wouldn't get angry anymore. Easy, right? It's easy. And that eventually evolved. Into I'm not gonna be sad anymore. I'm not gonna have sad feelings anymore because that's a bummer. You don't want to be a bummer around people. That's a buzzkill. That's not okay. So then, cut to that day, the day he died, and I'm standing in my parents' living room, my mom's living room, looking at him laying in his hospice bed. I got really scared for a second. I started to panic because I realized I wasn't crying, and I didn't know why. I realized I couldn't cry. I was trying to make myself. I didn't have a tear to shed about it, and I felt pretty fucked up about that. I felt pretty scared that I somehow was grieving him wrong, or that I wasn't sad that he was gone. Like, how can you do that, right? I thought something was fucked up. So when she asked me that question, do you think your dad, you think he might have something to do with it? There was this part of me that was like shocked. At first it was just shock. For a split second it was shock, and then it was outrage, and how could you even ask me that? Because of course it does, is the only answer to this, the only end to that sentence, because of course it did. And instead of anger coming out, I broke, and this wave of pain and exhaustion washed over me, and I wept. I started crying uncontrollably, and I cried for about 10 minutes, and it was the ugliest, hardest cry I'd had in so long. It's the first time I cried since he died. And she just held me. And when I was done, I sat up. And I looked at her. I looked at this person who heard what I was trying to say, and understood a little bit of what I was trying to feel. And she told me it's okay. It's going to be okay. And it's okay if you're not okay. And I knew I was going to be okay in that moment, right then and there, because I knew I was miserable. And I was so grateful for that, for the grief. For those of you who are wondering, though, we did end up making French toast that day. And it was delicious. But I found something out. I learned a little something about French toast. I did a little digging. Turns out brioche bread is actually what they use to make sandwich bread, like in the store, bunny bread. Do you guys not know this? Yeah. And sandwich bread, or Texas toast rather, is actually just thick-cut sandwich bread. So if Texas toast is thick-cut sandwich bread, and sandwich bread is brioche bread, that means I was wrong. Thank you so much. That's my story.